All right, welcome to Story Demon. I am David C. Hoke, and we are coming to you from the Metro West studio. It's really a back room in my house, but don't worry about that. It's Metro West studio. It's fancy. Jerry's been here before.
Yep.
Anyway, I am joined by an author, but I'm going to tell you another side. I mean, he is a nutritionist, fitness guy, guru, coach thing. It's hard to put the words exactly. You're a jack of all trades with fitness and exercise. He can make slow people faster. I'll put you that way. He makes slow people fast. But he had a particular place in my heart when Trish was sick. There's probably three people. There's probably more if I broke it down, but off the top of my head, there's three people that were instrumental in getting her fixed, and he's one of the three. So he's forever in here, bro for life.
Yep.
Jerry Snider. So, Jerry, I want you to talk about your books today. So why don't you do me, if you want to clean up anything I introduced you on, go for it.
No, but
introduce yourself as the author.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, my business is all in health and wellness because I do it all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've written two books. The first one, Confidence Through Health, actually came out because of the business, and that it was, everybody kept asking me basically the same questions. And so it was like, oh, let me just write this book. And then I don't have to have these conversations over and over and over again. I can just say, hey, grab the book and read the book, and I'll answer all those questions for you. Yeah. And I'm somebody, I dead honest, I never would have thought I would have written a book. I almost failed fourth grade reading.
Really?
Yeah, I got a D in fourth grade reading. That's hard to do. And now that I've had two kids go through it, I'm like, wow, I really didn't care.
Was there a disconnect? I mean, you're not dyslexic or anything, right? You're just
I was so busy with sports and other that I was like, I just didn't care to sit down and read. And
it was priority issues.
Yeah, it was priority issues. It was like I didn't care to read a book and do a book report. Nope, not going to happen. And that was like the whole class was that.
Yeah.
So I squeaked by that, but never would have thought I'd have written a book, and now I've got two. So.
Yeah, and the other one is a sugar coating.
No more sugar coating.
No more sugar coating.
Yep.
Now that sounds like a very specific book, not an all encompassing book, right?
Yeah, that one is more, and the first book, Confidence Through Health, that one came out of me in I think I wrote it in 14 days. It just came out. Like I said, though, it was the same conversation I was having over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I just knocked that. No, that was the first draft, of course.
Of course, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
But by the time it's published, it was 9 months or so.
It's still crazy short, especially from. Yeah. I mean, take this with the best way, but you're not like your Stephen King, and this is like book number 200 for you,
right?
So 9 months for a second book is pretty. Or I'm sorry,
first book
rather.
Yeah,
first book is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and so. Shortly after, and I self-published, but I had a publisher editor that helped me through it. And when we finished that one, she was like, I'm here when you're ready to write your next one. And I was like, hey, that's not going to happen. There's not going to be another one. Nah.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd write one. I'm not going to write two. Yeah. And so the first one came out in May of 2018, I believe, or June of 2018. And somewhere between there and the end of that year, I was like, uh-oh, here comes another one. The idea started flowing. And really, no more sugarcoating is more of a pun. There is some nutritional value in there. There is some, but it's more of a guidance of take the sugarcoating off your life, because the healthy foods are not sugarcoated. The healthy you is not sugarcoated when you're dealing and interacting with people. And so it's more about how to live your life the way that you want to live your life, and not the way that society tells you have to live your life.
So in writing a book, I'm still working on book number 1.
Right.
And it's mine's completely different realm. It's sci-fi action. It's completely different thing altogether. But one of the things that, and back when I did the indie movie stuff, it was a factor too. But you have to there's certain points you have to hit for your genre of book.
Right.
So you have a certain particular, any book is marketed to a certain reader.
Sure.
And those readers have certain expectations when they read books. So when you were writing to health-oriented books, were you aware or were you made aware of like, hey, I've got to hit these certain points for this audience for this to be a viable published book? Is that something that you went through?
On the first one, not so much until I got the editor involved, and she was like, "Okay, you've got a pretty good book here, but we've got to do some," and I was like, "Oh wow, okay."
Yeah.
And we had those conversations of like, who are you targeting? Because and she flat out said, if you're targeting more of a just an overall open-ended, like just a general health book to anybody, she said you need to pretty much double the size of this. Wow. And I was like, oh wow, okay. How about let's just deal with what we got? Where can I go? And she was like, then you're targeting the Christian who is struggling with the societal, like the diet plans and all the fad things that are out there, and like ready to make that like, okay, I got to break all these myths down and figure out like, where do I go?
Yeah.
And so we narrowed down to that target. In the second book, going into it, knowing that, I definitely like was writing with okay, who is my person that I'm looking for? Right. And it's a little bit more towards not necessarily the health minded, like the health person is trying to get healthy, physically healthy, but the person that is just stuck in I don't want to be this person, like sort of like I was when I was working in the corporate world, and I was like, this isn't really who I am. Yeah. I'm a health and fitness and fix it guy. And I was doing that on the side, and it was like, so if I could take it back to like how it helped me, it would be that time period of when I broke out of the corporate world and went off on my own, doing my own thing.
Yeah. So when you're actually sitting there to write the book, the first one, it sounds like you knew exactly. That's the first one's 14-day one, right? Yeah. So you knew you were on fire. Oh yeah. You knew what to say. So on book 2, which was more planned and methodical, it sounds like, at least. Yep. Like, so did you, when you sit down at the keyboard, did you mentally have an outline in your head, or is that something you had to work through as you went? So I guess what was the pre-planning, if any, that you did? Well,
and I'm working on another book right now, and so like I'm going through those stages, and so the way that I do it obviously is different from a lot of. I mean, I'm a guy that almost flunked 4th grade reading, so I'm not doing it probably the way that it's supposed to be done. Yeah. And the first time I sent my I love telling this, because the first time I sent my first draft of my first book off, and they did a grammar edit on it, it came back with almost the number of errors as there were words in the book. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. And I was like, do I know English? Like what is wrong with me?
What's your most common error? Like what's the thing you do all the time? Everybody has one.
Yeah.
If not more than one.
My most common thing is like just putting too many words in to describe where I need to go, instead of like just cut to it and just saying like, I might have 5 words in there, and then they'll come back and go, all you have to do is put this. Yes. And I'm like, I don't know that I would call that a top sin of mine, but I know exactly what you're talking about, where you put a lot of the like, right. It's like way too much. Like, dude, you didn't have to do all that. Yeah. Yeah. They're like, just cut all that out. Nobody wants to read that. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Mine is like the word that, which that is like one of I don't know about nonfiction world versus the fiction world. I know are different animals. So I don't know about the nonfiction world, but I know in the fiction world, that is like you get your knuckles slapped with the ruler. Right. And that was like, I learned that real quick. I was like, oh, to me, that's just how you talk.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I write it.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. But no, so to like the way that I went through it is, and what I'm doing now for the third book is basically I've got a Google Doc that and it's got multiple different highlighted sections. Each one's a different color of like a new thought comes to me, and I pull up the doc no matter where I am. It's because it's in my phone all the time. Like I just pull up the doc and I just start writing, that sentence or 2 sentences or 3 sentences. Okay. And I'm almost to the point on this third book to where I think I've got about 2,500 to 3,000 words of just random thoughts of just like, some of them are a couple of paragraphs, because I was like, oh wow, I'm on it, like write this out. Yeah. And then I'll go back and take all those and segment them based on like, okay, this is about this topic and this is about this topic. And then sort of I'll see my outline will sort of come to me of like, okay, this is where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
In the third book, I've already got the title. It's Honor Your Preparation. And so it's more about like the preparation that you put into something counts for something, right? Like it's not just about the performance. It's not just about the job interview. It's not just about the race but it's like, did you prepare for that? Because if you prepared for it, you don't need to be stressed. You don't be worried. You don't be nervous. You don't need to be. And all you have to do when you go to that culminating thing is honor the preparation that you put into it. If you didn't put any preparation into it, then it's going to come back to bite you.
Is there a how do I put this? Is there such a thing as like, hey, you did put the right preparation in, you did do the work, now you need to, and the follow through, respect that time that you put into it, and at the moment of doing it, because I'm sure athletes have done this before, where you're like, hey, you put all this work, you did all your best, come the moment of truth, and you blew it.
Oh yeah.
Is there that variation of honor your preparation too, with that point of view? Like,
yeah, I mean, of course that happens because any number of things can happen to somebody, in the moment.
Have you seen an athlete kind of just lose it in the moment?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just completely blow up. I mean, I saw one of my athletes do it this spring or this fall in a cross country race.
Yeah.
It just he was totally prepared, and since then has run amazing. Yeah. With that one specific race that he really wanted. Yeah. I think he just put too much pressure on it to be like, this is the one.
Yeah.
And he blew up because of the stress of it, which can happen. And that can happen in a job interview. That can happen in, asking somebody out on a date or, any of those things. It could be like, if you build it up too much and you don't if you build it up and rely on the emotions of what's going on versus the preparation that you put into it. Yeah. Then, I mean, similar to your book, like, you're writing a book, you're doing a ton of preparation for it.
Yeah.
Right. Like a ton. Yeah. You're doing research, you're doing all this stuff. I mean, like that's same book. You do all this preparation. And then when you go to write it if you have writer's block, then you've put too much pressure on yourself. It's not that you're not prepared.
Yeah. So writer's block. So did you get writer's block? And if you, and I know you did, it's like one of those questions you already know the answer to because we all do.
Right.
But what did you do when you did get it? Did you have to develop new techniques because writing is new to you, or were you able to bring some of the athlete mentality over to the writing? Like, how did that work?
Well, yeah, I did bring some of the athlete mentality over because one of the things you do as an athlete is you'll train really hard, you'll stress your body really hard to make the increases, and then you come off and you relax a little bit so that the increases can take a hold. Yeah. And so when I get those couple of times where I've had writer's block, it's been like, okay, I'm pressing myself. I've worked really hard. I've gotten to this point. Maybe I just need to take a little time off. Just let it sit. Don't think about it. And one of the things that I heard from another author, he addressed the writer block, and he said there's so many writers. He was a writing coach, and he's like, there's so many writers that when they start out, they say, oh, I'm going to write X number of words a day. Yeah. Right. And it's like, and so because we're in, we're a goal-oriented society, and it's like, oh, we need to have a number to it, a measurement tool to it. And it's like, yeah. And you get to the point where you're like, I that's too much pressure. I can't write it. I can't write 1,000 words today. Like, that just seems enormous. Mm-hmm. But if you say, instead of that, say, I'm going to spend an hour working on my book, whether it's writing, whether it's coming up with what I want the graphics to look like, or, I'm going to spend an hour on the book every day, or however long you want to spend on it. Mm-hmm. And then however much you write. And if you feel great and you're like, oh, I got in a groove, I'm going to keep writing, then you keep writing. Yeah. Right. But if you get that hour and you're like, I wrote 10 words, it's okay. You spent an hour on it, and that's what your goal was.
That's what you promised yourself. You live up to your promise you made yourself.
Exactly. And so I try to live by that of like, I'm going to spend this much time on it, and I have a goal for when I want to get it out. The second book I didn't hit that goal, and that's okay. I still got it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's been out. I think it was pre-COVID. It hit, right?
Yeah, it hit right before COVID.
Yeah, sounds right.
And so it's almost been out 2 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so it's like, but I wanted it to go out about 6 months before it did.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it didn't happen. It wasn't there, and it's okay.
So did you have when we did movies back in the early 2010s, like I don't know what do you call it, the teens? What are the 2010s?
I know, yeah.
Whatever it is, I don't know what's called the 2010s. When we did movies, the first one I did that was really my baby, and I really owned the ship. I liked it at the time. Now I can't watch any of it. It's just, it's like I can't watch any of it now. I just see all I see is a host of mistakes. I can't watch it. But on the first one, I was really proud of at the time. I thought I had really done something. And I did the second one, and the second one was almost like the sophomore jinx in football.
Mm-hmm.
You always hear like year two quarterbacks always stink up for the several rare exceptions like Peyton Manning or something. But usually the sophomore jinx hits, and my second movie, like nothing really worked for me. There's a few things I did okay. I think in terms of like the way it looks was okay, but just tonal whatnot, I didn't think worked. So when you made that second, which I haven't wrote 2 books, so now that you've written 2 books, did the second book, did you feel the sophomore slump, or do you feel it was stronger? Did you think you took it and you went further? What did you feel? Better, worse, equal?
Well, I mean, it was definitely harder.
Yeah.
Because the first book I was like, well, that's everything I know. So like, what else is there to write? Like, and so it's like, so there's a lot, obviously it took a lot more 14 days. There's a lot more research that I did for that one. Because it wasn't just here's everything I know.
Yeah.
It's here's what I think I know, and I got to go research and make sure it's right. In these areas, and so and I was worried about like, is it going to be better or worse, until actually so my editor hired somebody that was specifically on grammar to do the grammar edit and everything, and he did it. And he wasn't the same, 2 different people from the 2 books, and so it was a different person. He didn't know my style, didn't know anything about me, and sent all the edits back and the corrections back and everything, and I'll never forget, like, one of the last things he put was, I know this has got some adjustments to be made and some clarity of thought here and there, but this book actually helped me, like reading it through to edit it actually helped me, and I've stopped to think about how I'm doing some of the things in my life and what needs to change. And I was like, wow, okay. So
that's an ego boost right there.
Yeah, it was. But it was, and so that helped me understand it. Like, okay, I was worried about that slump, but again, for the third book, through the preparation I did, I prevented that, I think, from happening.
So obviously you wrote 2, and so you like the process enough to do a third. Is there and I think now this might be not so much about writing, maybe it's about the marketing of the brand that is the author.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about this a lot. Like I've been doing creative stuff for a living in some form or fashion at some level since 2009.
Yeah.
Even though we made indie movies, and even though they were on Amazon, and there are people out there in this world that watch my movies that I don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I've crossed it off the list, I feel like when that book is done and it's published, that is like the flag that I plant that says, hey, I am a professional creator, artist.
Right.
Did you feel, even if it was just placebo, did you feel like those books gave you some sort of like a validity as an authority in your world?
Yeah.
Or did you already have that? Maybe you didn't need it, but anyways, it's something that was crossed your mind.
Well, I think I had it. But it definitely, for me, emotionally, eternally, like it was like, okay, now I'm credible. Like, I've got something out there that is my work, that is,
There's something about that book that just
Mhm.
adds an authority that it seems like other mediums don't do.
Right.
Right or
And I
wrong.
think, it partially because like the research that goes into it and the fact that somebody is validating everything. Like I put stuff out there in, I can't remember which one it was, but it was like, I quoted somebody and the edit came back and it was like, yeah, that person didn't actually say that. They stole it from this person. So you need to change and I was like, oh. And so I'm like, that type of like validity to somebody else is checking to make sure that you're not,
Yeah.
if unless of course if you're doing all your editing yourself and putting it out there, then I mean, and of course on a nonfiction book, on a fiction book, obviously you can go whichever route you want to go.
Sure.
But for me, yeah, it definitely put and the other thing is that it like it's I guess as long as Amazon's around, like I'm assuming they're gonna be around for a while, as big as they are now. But
Sure.
like it's something that's like it'll be there when I'm gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another thing that it's like, oh wow, I actually have now done something that is going to be there until people stop reading books.
So in writing the fictional book, basically you have like certain rules to storytelling.
Right.
That are, and that's kind of what this, well, I should say kind of, that is what this YouTube channel is going to be about, is storytelling. And I think I'm a jack of all trades with a lot of like creative things and like online things. If I had to hang a hat on, say, hey, I'm an expert on something, I would say storytelling, because I've just spent so many years reading. I've been reading about how to craft stories. I mean, I read Sid Field's book Screenplay, and I was like 11.
Yeah.
So I've been obsessed with this thing since childhood. So in writing a fictional book, I know that I have to hit certain beats, not the marketing thing that we talked about before. I'm talking about from a storytelling point of view.
Yeah.
Rule of threes, you can't introduce your villain too late. There's foreshadowing, all these different things fall into place. So writing a nonfiction, would we call it a self-help? Would it fall in the self-help category?
Yeah, I think both of them do. Yeah.
Okay. So are there storytelling mechanisms that you had to go learn or use to write this book? Because it can't just be hey, here's data,
right.
go. It's got to be attractive to the reader.
Right.
So what kind of tools did you use in terms of, like, I guess for lack of a better word, storytelling?
No, that is true, because otherwise it's just a research paper that nobody's
gonna read.
Nobody's ever gonna read, right? Like, and so that was something that I definitely kept in my mind of like the first book, and I think one of the reasons why it came out so fast was because I had that conversation with so many people in that, that recent history.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I'm talking to you, and so let me tell you the story of how this works in your body.
Yeah.
But also, and I started reading books before I wrote one, obviously, in like late in life I started reading, but knowing that like, okay, I need to make this personal so that they not just stay engaged, but that they can see that like, okay, somebody else has gone through the same thing I'm going through.
Yeah.
And so I try to input some of that to, the books, and I mean, it may not be a theme as in like there's a main character going through the whole book or a villain that's pops up and goes through the book, but there's definitely a connection that I tried to make through telling a story of like, this is how it affected my life, or somebody I know, of a client's life, in that, when they went through these struggles of making these changes, so that they can relate to the story.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that, Trish, for those who don't know, my better half had a life-saving liver transplant, and leading up to it, Jerry was instrumental. Basically, we had to get her healthy and keep her healthy to get the transplant, and that was the role Jerry played. A lot of that with diet and whatnot. So, have you had an experience where you've written the book, or maybe away from the book, where you're like, hey, I've been there, done this, seen that. You got a case study like Trish, or you got an athlete over here. If you do these things, you'll be successful, and they push back on you. like it's almost like a form of criticism. How have you
Right.
have you I'm sure you've faced that. How have you dealt with that? It's not that they're telling you don't know what you know, but they're balking somehow at it.
Right. Right.
How do you deal with that?
Uh, you know, thankfully for what I do, being, more in the realm of like, here's the research and the data and that supports why I'm telling you to do the changes in your life.
Yeah.
And that, but I also come at it from a standpoint for myself. There's like, I'm going to argue a little bit, but then if you don't want to deal with it, like there's other people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not for everybody. But I think that's also where the credibility of the book comes in, because it's like if they hit something that knows in the book, the first one, then I can hand them the book and go like, here, you know what? Here's the data and the research behind it. This is why I'm telling you to do this.
Yeah.
Like, you need to read it. But I've also fired clients because they're like, that doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't, because they haven't really gotten past all the myths and things that they've been told. It's still in there. And until they do, it's sort of like, you're not going to change until you're actually sick and tired and ready to change.
Yeah.
And so that's what I deal with a lot with people. But, on the athlete side, it's pretty easy, because on the nutrition side, it's difficult because, not everybody has the dramatic change. That's why all the, the fad diets that you see on TV, they all put like results not typical, because everybody's body reacts differently.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to say like, hey, this person but from the athlete side, it's easy where you can go like, hey, did you go look at her times from 2 years ago before she started working with me? Look at her times now, see how much faster she is. Now you want to come work with me, right? Or, this kid was nowhere near like a collegiate level and he worked with me for 2 years and now he's running in college. Like, don't you want to come work with me? And so that makes it a little bit easier on that side of it.
Well, that you're aptly named Confidence Through Health, and I've known you for a while, so I've even heard you use on your preparation. I've heard you use that term even outside of the book.
Right.
I know these are real things to you, real mantras. They're not just like book titles to you; they're real.
Right.
And one thing about Confidence Through Health that I've learned just by watching you and then taking it and applying it to me, and of course, I'm not, down to 10% body fat.
Right.
I'm not perfect by any means, and I don't pretend to be. But I know when I'm going through a period of eating right and getting some exercise, that even sitting at a desk writing, I feel better.
Yeah.
Versus when you're on the junk food and you're binge watching TV for half a day, then you go to write, that translates there. I mean, it's amazing how Confidence Through Health, if you do these right things, then even in a completely different realm, you feel better. Even just walking through a grocery store, you feel better.
Right.
If you have a little better. So going back to the writing though, and this kind of segues from what we just talked about with the criticism or pushback from clients or readers, so that you went from being you're the coach,
right,
but you write a book. Well, the editor is kind of like your coach,
right?
So how did that feel for you to become the student again? And did you? Because I know athletes. I've known a lot of athletes over the years. Y'all all have. You wouldn't be an athlete if you didn't have a little bit of an ego, a little bit of a swagger, right? Mm-hmm. So what was it like getting told by this editor that you did that wrong and do it this way instead of that way? How did you adjust to that?
Well, I honestly, I went back to, you know what, dude, you almost failed fourth grade reading. You better listen to this person because you don't know what you're talking about. And so it's like I fully admit, and that's why I have people in my life that do the different things that they do, both for my business and for personal life. It's like, I don't file my own taxes because I don't want to deal with all that. I hire somebody that can do it. It's like, it's like somebody's an expert. And if I can afford them to do it, then I'm going to afford them to do it and let them do it because it's not my expertise. And I'm so glad that I didn't just, because I had people like, that were, thankfully I got referred to Lynn, who's my editor with Thomas Noble Books. I got referred to her, but, because I was looking at it going, well, how hard, and I've got friends that have done this. How hard is it to just put the book out on Amazon myself? They'll let you do it.
Yeah,
They'll let you
well,
upload a document, like a Word
yeah.
document, and they'll put it in a format, and and I was like, when I saw all those edits come back and how many mistakes I had, I was like, thank goodness I didn't do that myself.
Yeah.
Because that while it may have been a credible factor because I had a book, anybody that read it would have been like, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about, just from the language used and like how it was, it didn't flow well and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I have a habit of writing the way I talk.
Yeah.
And like I said, using the word that and just abbreviations
Right.
and whatever else and slang and everything else. Because I'm, according to Trish, I sound like a hick. So I have no reason
Well,
to
and
doubt.
that's another thing that I did. Like I went overboard. The first book, I went overboard and like wrote everything out, like do nots and all this kind of thing. And it came back and it was like,
Oh,
just put don't,
oh, I know. Yeah, I've
you
done
know?
that. Oh, I do that one.
He's like, it's
That's
so
one of
much
my.
easier when you're reading it to just your mind's gonna put in don't right there. Just don't write out do not, just write don't.
Well, see, I have a theory on that. Now, I have a tangible, like, why you and I have to, because I suffer that too.
Yeah.
I put do not instead of don't, and they are instead of there.
Right.
It's because it's easier to write they are than it is to they apostrophe re.
Right.
So it's literally easier on your hand and keyboard. So I just keep going.
Yeah.
And I got so used to doing it, I don't notice it. But that's always my defense against that. When
Yeah.
I have an editor, and that's one of my main pushbacks. And then we've had to go in circles about it. And I'm like, I get it, but it's just easier.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
like when you're on your phone and you have to like switch from the number keyboard with all the
Right.
stuff is like that's a pain. It was to do that,
Yep.
kind of like that.
I mean, one of the things that was the hardest for me on the first book was the title.
Yeah.
Because I had a working title, and then it was like after I got the second or third draft done, and I added more meat to it was like that title didn't fit anymore. And so that was a struggle of bouncing it back and forth with people, and so I had my editor involved, my wife involved, like I had other people involved of like, hey, what do you think about this title? What do you think about what is this? What did this phrase mean to you? Before I landed on Confidence Through Health. And it's funny because it actually came to me. I had just finished running, and I was sitting in my living room, like cooling off, drinking some water, getting ready to, get in the shower, start my day. And I was like, oh, hey, that sounds pretty good. I wrote my editor, and she wrote me back right away, and she was like, that's it. Print it. Let's go. That's it. Don't worry about anything else. I was like, okay, good.
That's
So,
right.
but don't stress about the title because it'll come.
Yeah, I've always liked the Confidence Through Health title. I've always liked it a lot. I think On Your Preparation is just as good. Not that Sugar is not good too. That's good too. But those two are almost like they're bumper sticker or their T-shirt. Right. I mean,
yeah,
they're worthy of that. So one of the things that I'm trying to do with my social media in preparation for the book is, and I'm not sure how much important this is to you or not. Maybe I think it probably is important to you, but I'm really trying to get outside of my sphere, and not just my friends and family. I'm talking about like I live here in Central Texas. I want more conversations with a guy in California and New York and Chicago and Missouri, wherever, in England, Germany, and that's become really important to me. Not that my friends and family, the people I live around, are important, but I think that for me to grow my vision for my work, I've got to get because other places have other cultures, even other states have a different culture.
Oh,
we're used to here. I mean, you're from Louisiana. Yeah, there's a whole other world down there.
Oh, I mean,
I know when you get to the border, as soon as you cross the border, you can buy booze in a gas station. The first time I saw that, I was like, "This what? You've got hard liquor right there at the gas station?" That's a crazy thing. And you experience that, and that's becoming really. And the more I do this, the more I see how crucial it is. And I have a buddy that's from LA, and anytime he's in town, I try and get a good hour in with him just to hear other thoughts that aren't centered here. Has that been important to you in the writing process or in your coaching in general?
Yes, it is. I'd say for the first book, it wasn't so much a thought. But from the first book came also a podcast, which Confidence Through Health. And so that that really peaked to like, okay, if that's going to work, it has to be, way out there. And now it's been downloaded in, I don't know, 35 or 40 countries.
Is it?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, I mean, not a ton, but I mean, hey, that's, and I know through that I've gotten exposure because I've been called upon as an expert for an article in Australia, in Canada. And so, that definitely helps because one, I mean, it's exposure and it's everything for your books, but it gets you in that community of like, okay, how are they reacting to things? And the questions that they ask me when they're interviewing me are huge because then it gives me an idea of like what's important in that area.
Yeah.
And so I try to take all of that and put it in the book. And the people I follow, I try not to follow just local people or people that are only the health food and only the super athletic. It's like following a bunch of people in the self-help world, but that are all over the place.
Yeah.
So that I could get a good variety of what's going on in the different areas of the world when it comes to the subject matter.
Yeah, I found writing the book. I was writing about, of course, it's sci-fi, so there's Mars, and then I have them. There's a whole period that goes through Russia and then all these different places, and I have to like literally research, like Google Earth and look at like maps of Russia, and I even had to like look at Mars and like and learn some of the facts about Mars, and of course. I'm sure you experienced it too. Your browser history while you're writing a book is wild.
Yes, it is.
I'm sure you had some crazy searches. Which can you think of a crazy search?
Oh gosh,
that you're willing to say?
No, but I will say that I started getting ads for stuff on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm like, where is this coming? Oh yeah. That's right. That plays into my book. Yeah, that's right.
That happened to me because my main character is a female.
Yeah.
And I had to research the name of, I wanted to wear a certain top. And so I researched it and I started getting bra ads.
Yeah.
Through social media and just because of that search. But I had to look up how to like. Yeah.
I mean, I get, and I maybe it's even gone into the mail because like, when you research like different diseases or things that, and then all of a sudden, like now I'm starting to get all the pharmaceutical stuff for those diseases. And I'm like, I don't have this. I don't need.
Yeah.
I don't need these drugs. I don't need this stuff. I don't need the ARP stuff being sent to me in the mail because I'm not old enough yet. But, you start researching these things that the algorithms tell you, oh, you must be a 64-year-old male now. Here's the stuff.
Yeah. I had to look up a lot of female-based stuff. Because I didn't want to, I think I was looking for the name of a particular kind of top that led to getting bra ads. And then I was looking at how a nuclear bomb works at one point, which that educated me a lot. Because in movies they'll be a nuclear bomb, and they'll shoot it with a missile, and of course a nuclear bomb will go. In reality, like that can't happen. Like it takes a very specific sequence of events for a nuclear bomb to detonate as a nuclear bomb.
Right.
So now I watch movies and it's kind of ruined because like that bomb wouldn't have went off like that.
Right.
So, anyways, it's funny. It's funny how you see behind the scenes. It kind of like it enlightens you and it kind of ruins other things. All right, so we got 2 books down, 1 forthcoming.
Right.
The forthcoming one we're thinking. In a year-ish.
End of next year. Yeah.
End of next year.
By 2024.
But when we want to buy Confidence Through Health and no sugarcoating.
No more sugarcoating.
No more sugarcoating.
Yep.
Where do they go?
They're both on Amazon, both in the paperback and in Kindle format. You can go to my website, allinhealthandwellness.com and get signed copies through that. So yeah, they're pretty easy to find.
Yeah, good deal. And we also can find you at your website domain is
allinhealthandwellness.com.
And the podcast name is
Confidence Through Health.
To make sure we're pitching all the things. I want people to leave here becoming a Jerry enthusiast.
Yep.
So, all right. So, podcast, books, you got it all covered. They just go Instagram, run
Yep.
your Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff.
Yep.
If they want to find you, they can find you. And you,
Hopefully.
and I know because I help you with your stuff. You put your nuggets out routinely. So, if people watch you, they can get a drip of
Right.
your methodology, basically, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Your worldview on health, which I can attest to, it actually works. Jerry's stuff actually works.
It does, yes.
All right. Well, thanks. We're glad you took the time to talk to me about writing a book. And
thanks for having me.
You're an accomplished author, and I can't wait for number 3.
Yep. Me neither. So it'll be fun.
All right.
It's always fun when it's on the other side and it's done.
I can't wait to join you.
Yep.
It feels like forever, but I can't wait to join you.
Yep.
Make sure you click subscribe and all the fucking stuff that people tell you to do.